Every time something like this happens in the public eye, I always catch myself slowing down and asking whether we're actually witnessing concern or just another cycle of collective obsession dressed up as worry. Because when a celebrity is grieving, especially one who has grown up in front of cameras, people don't just watch quietly. They analyze, they screenshot, they compare, they diagnose. And with Kelly Osbourne, all of that has collided at the worst possible moment of her life. Since her father passed away, the conversation around her hasn't been about loss or healing. It's been about how she looks, how much weight she's lost, whether she's eating, what drugs she may or may not be using, and whether she's okay enough to meet some invisible standard the internet has decided on. And that's where things start to feel deeply uncomfortable to me. Kelly has never existed in a vacuum. Her entire identity has been shaped by visibility. From the moment The Osbournes aired, she was branded as the messy, outspoken, rebellious daughter. Her body was commented on before she was old enough to understand what body commentary even meant. Her weight became a storyline, her struggles became entertainment, and over time, she learned that honesty brought attention, and attention brought relevance. So when people say, well, she shares everything, so of course people are going to talk, they're not wrong, but they're also missing how dangerous that dynamic can become when someone is in crisis. Oversharing doesn't mean someone is strong. Sometimes it means they don't know how to be private anymore. Losing a parent is destabilizing in a way that's hard to explain unless you've lived it. It doesn't just make you sad, it makes the world feel unsafe. Your sense of time changes, your body reacts in ways you can't control. Food becomes irrelevant for some people, overwhelming for others. Sleep disappears, emotions spike and crash without warning. Now imagine going through that while millions of people are watching your face for signs of decline. That alone would push most people into survival mode. And when you're in survival mode, everything feels like an attack. That's why I understand Kelly's defensiveness, even when I don't fully agree with how she frames the situation. When she asks what people expect her to look like right now, that's a real question. There is no correct grieving appearance. There's no approved weight, no acceptable level of exhaustion, no aesthetic version of loss. The fact that she's showing up at all is something. And it's true that some comments cross the line into cruelty, mockery, and entitlement. Nobody deserves that, especially not while mourning. But here's where the conversation gets more complicated, and where I think pretending this is only about bullying does everyone a disservice. The concern didn't come out of nowhere. It didn't start with one bad photo or one haircut. It's rooted in years of context. Kelly has spoken openly about obsessive weight loss, about feeling controlled by food, about wanting to disappear to avoid scrutiny. She's admitted to being miserable while chasing thinness. She's denied using certain medications and later praised them publicly. That inconsistency, combined with visible physical changes and the timing of her father's death, is why people are uneasy. Not jealous, not threatened, uneasy. There's also the Ozempic factor, which has become this cultural lightning rod that exposes just how warped our relationship with bodies has become. Ozempic isn't the villain some people make it out to be, but it's also not the miracle solution it's marketed as. For people who medically need it, it can be life-changing. For people chasing thinness in a society that already glorifies extreme weight loss, it can reinforce some very dangerous patterns. When Kelly talks about it dismissively, framing criticism as bitterness or class resentment, it creates distance between her and the very people who are worried about her. It also ignores the reality that access, supervision, and long-term consequences look very different for celebrities than they do for everyone else. What really sticks with me is how normalized appetite suppression has become. We've reached a point where not wanting to eat is framed as discipline, control, even success. So when Sharon Osbourne says Kelly can't eat right now, it's treated as an understandable side effect of grief rather than something that might need attention. And yes, grief can absolutely kill appetite. But when appetite loss becomes part of a larger pattern, especially in a family with a long history of disordered eating and extreme weight interventions, it's worth pausing. Not pointing fingers, pausing. Sharon's role in all of this is complicated. She loves her children fiercely, but she also comes from a generation and a personal history where thinness was survival currency. She's been open about her own struggles, her surgeries, her use of weight loss drugs, and how far things went before she realized she couldn't reverse them. That honesty is important, but it also means Kelly grew up watching those behaviors modeled as normal. When Sharon deflects criticism by blaming unhappy people online, it protects Kelly emotionally, but it may also prevent deeper reflection. Sometimes protection looks like defense, and sometimes it looks like intervention. Knowing which one is needed is the hard part. What makes this entire situation feel heavier is how much of it is being played out publicly. Kelly is responding to comments, addressing headlines, defending her choices, correcting narratives. That constant engagement keeps her locked into the very feedback loop that likely contributed to her struggles in the first place. Grief doesn't heal in the comment section. It heals in quiet moments, in therapy, in community, in time. And time is the one thing the internet never allows. I also think we need to be honest about how aging factors into this conversation. Kelly is in her 40s now. Grief ages people. Stress ages people. Weight loss changes facial structure. Hair color and styling can dramatically alter perception. All of that is normal. But because women in the public eye are expected to remain frozen versions of themselves, any deviation is treated as alarming. That pressure alone is enough to distort how someone sees themselves in the mirror. At the same time, dismissing every reaction as misogyny oversimplifies what's happening. Some of the loudest concern isn't coming from teenagers or trolls, it's coming from women who recognize the signs because they've lived them. People who have struggled with food, control, and grief often recognize those patterns instinctively. That doesn't give them the right to comment on someone's body, but it does explain why the reaction feels emotional rather than casual. What I wish would change is the way we talk about care. Care doesn't mean surveillance, it doesn't mean screenshots or speculation. It means holding space for complexity. It means acknowledging that someone can be both grieving and struggling with other issues at the same time. One doesn't cancel out the other. Grief can amplify existing vulnerabilities. It can strip away coping mechanisms. It can make old habits feel comforting again, even when they're harmful. I don't think Kelly is lying about her pain. I don't think she's performing grief for sympathy. I think she's overwhelmed, defensive, and trying to maintain control in a moment where everything feels out of control. And control often shows up through the body because it's the one thing people feel they can manage when everything else falls apart. There's also something to be said about how thinness is still treated as a moral achievement. Even when people claim concern, the conversation is framed visually. She looks too thin, she looks older, she looks different. Rarely do we ask how someone feels, what support they have, or whether they're allowed to step away. The fixation on appearance reveals more about our culture than it does about Kelly herself. At the end of the day, I don't think this is a story about Ozempic or Instagram comments or even weight loss. I think it's about a woman who lost the most important person in her life while still being expected to function as a public figure. I think it's about a family that has always survived by being loud and defiant, now facing a kind of silence they can't control. And I think it's about a society that doesn't know how to sit with grief unless it can turn it into content. I hope Kelly finds a way to unplug, even temporarily. I hope she eats when she can without guilt or performance. I hope she's surrounded by people who care more about her long-term health than her public image. And I hope the rest of us learn how to recognize when concern turns into consumption. Because grief is not a spectacle, and healing doesn't happen on a timeline that fits neatly into a headline or a comment thread. If there's one thing this situation should remind us of, it's that being visible doesn't make someone invincible. It just means their pain is easier to see. And maybe instead of asking whether Kelly Osbourne looks okay, we should be asking whether we're giving her the space to not be okay at all.